Hey, what is up? It is your boy Kev,
And Michelle.
and we are back with another episode of the ER. So today we are going our crisis situation. Let's go into that. Our crisis situation. Crisis situation is self-identity and imposter syndrome. So we're gonna try to like tie that in, and we're gonna be talking about self-identity. So Nichelle, like what do you think, what does self-identity mean to you, like the term phrase self-identity?
Well, to break it down, self referring to who you are, persona, the person that you are, and image. It's just based off of, what is being viewed, how other people view you, how you view you. And pretty much, I would say there's a separate, I guess, definition according to how you want to identify your self image, and then what society says based off of how we should view ourselves in regards to self image. So I think those are two things that we could probably talk about, break down a bit, and yeah, for me personally, self identity has everything to do with who you are at the core. Has nothing to do with your achievements, what you do, your role. Those are completely separate from the definition of who you are as an actual spiritual being, someone who is a living, breathing soul. And I think that also ties into your values, your morals, and then that kind of boils down to I guess everything else that surrounds image and identity and things like that. So that's what I would say.
Okay, yeah. Like for me, like again, self-identity I think would go into, it'd be kind of the same thing. Just being like who you are, your morals, what you stand on, everything that kind of makes you you, how you deal with situations, how you deal with adversity, how you deal with, everything that kind of life throws at you. I believe like that is what makes you you. So that's your self identity. So why do you think like self identity is something that we should all be looking at as artists, entrepreneurs, people in business?
Do you want to answer since I started?
Yeah, I'll go with that. Honestly, I think like if you don't know who you are, then you don't know why you're doing something. You don't know exactly, why you've taken on this role. And I feel like a lot of times without self identity, you wouldn't know how to deal with certain situations. And having a good grasp on self identity helps you to navigate, especially in like this entrepreneurial world, or if you're an entrepreneur or you're an artist or you're in business, it helps you to navigate coming across, different people, different businesses, different practices, and a lot of people will have different morals. So knowing who you are helps you to walk into those rooms and be in those rooms and move with a certain move like yourself, move with, compassion, love for yourself, and knowing what it is that you want to do, what you want to achieve, and how you will go about doing it. So if you don't know yourself, sometimes you'll be in certain rooms and, you know, it things might not work out for you. They might not work out because you don't know who you are. So, anything somebody say, like back home, they say you have like you're a young jelly head, you have a soft head, like, anything can just penetrate it, like you have to be like the hard coconut shell, like you have to take a couple for it to penetrate. So yeah, without knowing yourself, working within this like industry or any industry that you're in, you may be influenced by a lot of other things that don't speak to you. So I think like that's what I'd say about self identity, and especially in this realm and in your niche or wherever you are.
Okay, dope. For me personally, just to kind of tag on to what you were saying, I think it's really important to know yourself for sure. know your why. I feel like knowing your why has everything to do with your authentic desires, the things that you want to do at the core. And that's going to shape and set the foundation for who you are. And the minute you kind of waver from that is the minute you kind of lose yourself. And identity is almost like something that we've created. It's not necessarily who you are. I feel like it's something that we have to kind of put together. So same thing you were saying, it's like you know who you are, but an identity is something that is put on almost in a way. So your who you are and the identity have to be balanced and in one accord, so that you're not, again, like you're not a jellyhead, like you were saying. And you know, the minute you start to, I guess, stray from that and you focus on the things that are not really, how should I put it? The things that are not really, in line with where you want to go, how you want the world to view you, your audience, whatever the case is, where you're working in business, then that's the minute that you lose track of a lot of things. And again, lose track of your why. So I think the minute you remember, it snaps back into knowing your authentic desire, knowing who you are, at the core, number one, then that's never that's never something that will ever go away, and you will always know your self identity. So yeah.
All right. So, how do you think like imposter syndrome plays into self identity, or do you think like it actually does play into self identity?
Yeah, because imposter syndrome, I feel like the sound, yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of a,
Yeah, it's okay.
it's okay. Yeah, so I think that whole identity thing sometimes can get the best of us. So we think that we have to act a certain way to be acceptable. And again, that goes right back to thinking that you're not good enough just to be yourself. And that, I guess, the minute you start to question yourself, or the minute you start to, think that you're not able to do the things that you want to do in your business, or, as an artist, or whatever the case is, that's the minute that you kind of bring everything that is not meant for you into your existence. And I feel like that's why it's so important for you to know who you are, so that you are attracting everything that is meant for you. And the minute you start to identify with something that is completely, not of you, you lose track of who you are. So, I think that's what happens with imposter syndrome, where you think that you're not good enough, and you start to act out of character, and you lose track of who you are. And it's really important to just, stay level headed, find ritualistic practices, or, things that you can do to kind of help regulate that. So you're not stuck in limbo between who you want to be, who you're supposed to be, and then who you actually are. So, yeah.
All right. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Honestly, like imposter syndrome, and it hits everyone. It affects everyone. Like I've dealt with it. I'm sure maybe you have dealt with it. So it kind of hits everyone. But the thing about imposter syndrome, and I was watching a video about this last night, I believe. The thing about imposter syndrome is like people see themselves doing something at such a grand level that they don't take into consideration like what they're doing now. So like for me, like I am a cinematographer because I love doing lighting and I love doing things and I like to make things look like a movie, cinema. So I am a cinematographer. I might not be like Michael Bay or someone else, but like I am doing it. So I have to give myself that level of grace to know that yes, there are levels to doing things, but I am doing it. So I'm not faking it, because I am actually doing it. And the faster, the quicker you realize that, is the more effective you're going to be at what you're doing. So for me, I love doing photos. I love doing cinematography, videography. So sometimes, you're like, man, I'm not doing it like this person, or I'm not doing all of these things. And you never know. You cannot measure yourself based on what other people are doing, because you don't know what's going through the mind of that other person. You do not know what's going through the mind of that other creator. You never know. That person might be stretching themselves thin, or a lot of times they're thinking the same thing, that they're not good enough, or they're not what they say they are. Right? So it's like, again, that comes back to self-identity. You have to identify as that. You have to be that in your mind, and then everything else will flow. And as Michelle says, like, that's what you will attract. If you can't think of it, if you're not that, if you think you're not good enough, then that's what you will attract. You will not get the jobs, you will not get the calls. You will be in a state of limbo, not knowing what to do, where to be, and that's what you will be. So again, like, you just have to realize that everyone goes through it. Everyone feels a certain type of way when it comes to their craft, because again, art is subjective. Art is, what one person might like, the other person might not. So you really have to understand and, like, take a step back and realize that you are doing it. You may not be doing it at the grand level that you think you want to, or you see other people doing it but you're going to work up to that. So you kind of have to keep that in the back of your mind, that you're going to work up to that.
Yeah, that's I think that's a really great. Well, you've said a few points, not just one point. You touched based on a lot of important things, like that whole concept of thinking that you are, or you haven't reached where you want to get as yet, therefore you feel that you're not worthy, or whatever the case is. That happens to a lot of us, especially me as a vocalist. I find sometimes what happens for me is, when I'm writing, or when I'm singing, or when I'm recording, or whatever the case is, I feel like I have to be like greater than what I am, or I see myself in spaces or doing certain things, and then that takes over my mind instead of being present and knowing that in this moment, I am Nichelle, I am who I say I am, and I am worthy of everything that's meant for me. And I think that authenticity has to be practiced, and it has to be something that is, like, you say to yourself, like, self-talk daily, so that it's not something that kind of stays with you, where you're constantly in a space of, like, contemplation of who you are, or whatever the case is. So I think like you were saying, it's really important for you to know that whoever you are and what you want to do is entirely capable and possible once you put your mind to whatever it is that you want to do. And there's no, like, I always talk to Jay about this, where it's like, I don't like putting people on pedestals. And a lot of times, like, I feel like that imposter syndrome, or the, seeing yourself on a greater scale, comes when you see people with greater success. And a lot of times, like, you start comparing yourself because you're not in that space. And a lot of times you don't know how people get to those spaces. You don't know what, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, even when people are in those places and spaces, they're not the most happy, because it's like, yeah, you get there, but they lose themselves along the way. So that's why it's like that foundation is so important. And you really have to just know your why, like, going back to, like, what we were saying. And where we are right now, like, I know for myself personally, like, I know that wherever I'm supposed to go, and I know where I want to get to, you know what I mean? I have an idea of where I want to go. I know that I will get there in time. There is no specific time frame. I feel like everyone's always talking about, the biological clock, and the this and that, and da 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 da, and oh my God, I have to, before I'm, like, in my mid 30s, I have to do this, and I have to do that, and I have to, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, that is such an immense pressure on men, women, like, artists, creatives, entrepreneurs, whatever the case is. And because we see people who have done it earlier than us, who have done it faster, or whatever the case is, we forget that it's like, it's not a race. It's about the journey. And the journey on your way to getting to those destinations is supposed to be the best part. And I think for me, I think that's why I get frustrated with myself sometimes, because I forget about that. It's like being present and remembering that the journey is the best part about it. Because when you get to the destination, it's just like, yeah, I did that. I'm here. I'm present. You know, and yeah, just it happens to the best of us. So just remember those things. Like, you know, when you get there, and everything is intentional. You know, everything is divine timing and divine order. So, you know, you have to just know, like, just stay on track, know who you are, and yeah.
Hey, couldn't have said it better myself. Like, for real, you gotta. That's a big part. As again, going back to self identity, knowing who you are, like getting to know yourself is a journey in itself, right? So you're trying to be on this journey to wherever it is that you want to get to, but there's also an inner journey that you have to be mindful of as well. And sometimes where you want to get to might not even feed that inner journey or that inner person. So that's why knowing yourself, knowing who you are, like that is huge, especially for an artist, a creative, an entrepreneur. Like, yeah, like remember this. Remember that the journey that you're on has to align with the journey of self. Right? That's a big thing, because if you don't know that, if you don't know yourself, and again, we've spoken about this many times where we've said knowing your why. If you do not know your why, it is going to cause a lot of problems for that journey that you want to embark on.
Yeah. So if you had like a suggestion or an example of, you know, how people can kind of reset or get back to a place of knowing who they are, or I guess like revisiting or, you know, reflecting on self-identity, what would you say?
Well, I can't, I don't know if this is like an exact thing to do, but for me particularly, like I just take time to, sometimes I look back on old videos of myself or old photos, old spaces that I've been. Like I had a studio back home, and I would think about, before this was for money, before I did this for clients, I did this for myself. Like, what was that feeling? How did I feel when I was doing this? What was the emotions that I was going through? Right? Because now I don't have to be stressed. I wasn't stressed about clients calling me, setting up meetings, Zoom calls, working the back end of I wasn't thinking about none of that. All I knew was that I was creating, and that was giving me joy. That was bringing me peace. That was bringing me, that was just fulfilling something inside of me. It was nourishing something inside of me.
Purpose.
So I would say, like, to sum that all up, like, take some time to sit down and really think of where you've come from, what you've done, and ponder on the feelings that it evoked in you, right? And then through all of those things, you can start to see, or you can start to regain sight of that why. So that why for me was, personally, it was about creating, right? Creating within a community that I felt like we didn't have people speaking for us, or our people speaking for us. Like, there was no people around. I was doing the things that I was doing at the time for me, or for people like me, or for my friends. So that was my why. My why was always to create a space, or to create content for people like me doing what I like to do. Right? And then again, that's just personal. So I have a different why for like my business and different things like that. But it all coincides with my personal why. Right? So what about you? Do you have, like, is there something that you can say for regaining sight of that why, or, aligning with your inner journey of self-identity?
Yeah, as a woman, it's very different. We're told from we're children how to be as young women when you grow up. This is how you have to sit. This is how you have to act. Keep your back straight. Da 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 da. You know what I mean? You want to find the best suitor. You have to do. You know what I'm saying? You have to be pretty. You have to. And for a long time, I didn't know who I was because I was always getting fed all of this, self-identity talk, but it was based off of societal, I guess, acceptance or what they think.
Societal norms and
Yeah, you know what I
social
mean?
norms and stuff like that.
Social norms, yeah. And but based off of what is accepted in society. And I honestly couldn't care less. Like growing up, I kind of just I had my feet wet in like everything in arts, sports, whatever I could try and do, I did. And I excelled at a lot of them. And I felt like my self identity was found in the trial and error, was found in just trying new things and then getting good at them. And then they now are showing up in my adult life, in my adult space where I've tried so many different things where I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm good at. I know what my strengths are. And that kind of paves the way for my self-identity and knowing what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do. And then even in the things that I'm not able to do, I'm always willing to learn. I'm always willing to grow. Yeah, again, like as a woman, there's a lot of pressure about how you have to present yourself to the world. However, you make that decision. You know what I mean? In it all, you are the person that needs to know exactly how you want to present yourself to the world. And if there's any person out there who feels like they don't know themselves, it's like going back to like what you were saying, sitting down, reading, reading is actually really great. I find when I sit down and I have like self-help books or things that talk about self-identity or more of like the journey of life or just like, things like that. Those are things that kind of open up your mind and open up your perspectives to hear what other people have gone through and things like that. And that kind of also helps set the tone to realize like I can be my own person. I'm okay with finding my own path of identity and I don't have to fit into a box or I don't have to, you know what I mean, based off of how I was taught, based off of like, how I was raised or whatever the case is, you can set the path for yourself. So my advice would just be, try different things, like experiment with the things that you love to do, find out what really makes you happy. And you're again going back to like your inner desires, like the things that you love to do. And explore on that and you'll definitely find it. You'll find your identity. And there, again, there's no rush. There's people who are still searching for who they are all the way into their 40s, 50s, 60s. They find their calling later on in life. So there is no set time. And even when people say, oh, you need to find out who you are before you're 30, that's it's not the truth. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like, take your time to learn what you want to do. Take your time to, find out who you are. But don't procrastinate. Take your time, but don't procrastinate. Like at least try to.
What do you mean when you say don't procrastinate?
Like, I mean, I feel like sometimes there are a lot of people out there who they'll say, yeah, they're taking their time, but it's not taking their time. Like they procrastinate. And I can speak to that for myself. Sometimes I procrastinate on, my work or what I got to do, or I know I got to make content. I know I got to do certain things. I know I got to do certain things for my business. And because I know that I may be proficient at doing certain things, I just procrastinate. I don't just go out and do it and just have it done. I'm like, yeah, I could do that tomorrow. I could do that in an hour. I could do that. And, you procrastinate. But again, with everything that I've taken in and that I've learned, it's like, at least try to be 1% better every day. And I try to implement that in my life every single day. Just try to be better 1%, just 1%. Do something or learn to do something better than yesterday for, just 1%. And I feel like that kind of snowballs into you wanting to do more and learn more and be more. And that kind of helps you get on that path. But like, I totally agree with you. It's like, you don't have to be who you want to be tomorrow or next week or in a month. Right. But at least put strides towards getting there. You know, don't just like put it on the back burner and say, you know, it'll come to me, or my time will come, or
I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying my time will come. Like, I feel like we always talk about this too, where it's like, I don't know. I feel like from a woman's standpoint, like I'm huge on like how we as women attract, and like I always say like things will happen in its time. And I know the logical side or the masculine energy, a lot of times are, you know, men, they're like, oh well, I have to have deadlines. It's more from a logical and structural space. But I think, again, even like what you're talking about, like procrastination, I feel like if there isn't discipline, and if there isn't like, you know, let's say you have like a period of time where you want to do something and you know that you procrastinate or you take time, then allow yourself enough time and give yourself grace to make sure that you are actually getting those things done, so that you give yourself time and you have time to take breaks or whatever the case is. Because I know for myself, like, I don't know if anyone else is like that. I know other people are like this, but you know, it takes me time to get things done, and you know, I have to kind of really space things out. But then when I'm working or I'm in it, you know, and I think you can also attest to that as well, where it's like when you're focused on a task and you have to get it done, you have a deadline or whatever the case is, you're on it. And then there's those in between times where, you know, you just need a minute to breathe, and then you feel almost guilty for not wanting to take time, you know. But there's nothing wrong with that. Again, there is, like, time is an illusion. Like when you need a break, you need time. You know what I mean? So as long as you're working, like you were saying, as long as you're working towards it, like, I don't, you know, I think regardless, we're still working towards it. We're going to get to where we need to get to in its time, in our time. So
yeah, exactly. Knowing who you are, know how much time you need to get something done. Take time to learn who you are. And you know what? I feel like we can really end on that, because, you know, again, allow grace, allow space for growth, allow space for you to do what it is that you have to do. You know, understand yourself, you know your self identity, right? And the imposter syndrome thing, like, it's real, but I know through what I've done and what we've done and what I've overcome, that you can find yourself, be yourself, and complete that journey, right? So yeah, honestly, I think that's it. Like,
yeah, let's end on that note. So thank y'all for tuning in. We had a great chat. You know, I thought this was really great that we spoke about this, because a lot of times in our community, we don't really have spaces where we can kind of talk about, like, you know, vulnerable topics like this. And even for creatives, like, these are things that we deal with daily, you know, and it's good that we have this space that we can create and talk about this. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We hope to see you guys in the next episode.
Follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, subscribe, send this to a friend, and we will see you next time. All right, peace.